All right, we're on. So, welcome back. This is part two of me, Maya Aronson, interviewing my lovely grandmother, Evelyn Aronson, about your philosophy and your wisdom, your life wisdom, right? So this is part two. Last time we'll do a little summary, but last time we just kind of got a sense of some of the words and some of the ideas that you have used in your life, specifically to deal with difficult people, right? We introduced you as the Jewish saint, which still applies. And yeah, so this time we're going to dive a little deeper, right?
Yeah, a little
Do you want
deep.
to say anything before we start?
Well, I just want to say that, as I said last time, my secret to dealing with difficult people is because I live two lives. And on my personal life, Evelyn Aronson, I don't do so well with difficult people. I get angry. I don't want to be with them. And, you know, that's the normal way. However, I have a second life, and that's the life of my spectator self. So when I take myself, personal self out, and I just look at the world, just as a spectator, no skin in the game, you know, I see people from in a very different way. And when I look at them that way, I can get along with difficult. I can't always get along with them, but I don't get upset by them. I can tolerate them. And sometimes, when people are difficult, a lot of people don't want to be with you. And then I kind of feel sorry because sometimes difficult people are kind of lonely. So I guess that would be my summary.
Yeah, that was a great summary of last time. And another thing we talked about was the spectator self is something you can engage, right? It's not always there necessarily, but you can engage it. Is that right?
And that's what we're talking about today, how I engage my spectator. That's important because sometimes you think of a spectator as completely passive, you know,
Mm.
but it's not passive because it can be an important active part of your life, as
Yeah,
Evelyn Aronson.
perfect. Yeah, so one thing that we wanted to touch on or go a little bit more into depth this time was last time you mentioned that it helps in order to engage this spectator self, it helps to be like Sherlock Holmes. And I just wanted to know little bit more what you meant about that
Okay. Well,
when dealing with difficult people, of course.
well, I start to look at everybody as a potential mystery. And, we're very, very complex. And I take up my magnifying glass if I want. First of all, most people you don't really know. You just know them on the surface. You don't really know what goes on behind. But sometimes, if you want to know more about a person, you have to interact with them or you're curious or something. I take up my magnifying glass and I kind of look at them differently. And what you see is a potential mystery. What I want to do today is kind of take us on a deeper journey, kind of looking through the magnifying glass and seeing who each of us really is. So I start to look at people as fellow journeyers on this journey through life. And when I try and do that, I hope you can help visualize what I'm talking about. It's kind of hard. When I look at people and do a complete investigation, I have to go all the way back into where do each of us come from? Looking through the magnifying glass and going back through time, each of us really starts with a fertilized egg. I mean, going way, way back to a once upon a time. And each of us has a unique genetic code, and that we have no control over. We inherit that code. We do not choose it. It is our inheritance. So our nature is where we start. We each have our own unique nature. But then we introduce the nurture part. The nurture part starts very early. It's in our environment, the environment in which we are nurtured. Okay, so that environment starts in the womb because this egg is in a womb, and the environment in that womb depends on many factors. So already the nature is influenced by our nurture. So our life journey is a mixture of our original nature, our genetic code, and the environment in which we develop. And that's our nurture. So it's like a drama, like we're a star in that drama. And the nature and the nurture are in constant interplay as your life continues forward. So there's an interplay until the final curtain. So it's continuing on. And each of our dramas is deserving of well-deserved applause because each drama is difficult, filled with challenge, and filled with promise. So I want to go back to Act 1. Act 1 is the first few years of our lives, and that's the most important. We really have not much control. Nature and nurture are improv actors. They're busy determining what we're like. Are we lovable? Are we loved? Are we safe? Are we healthy? Are we smart? Are we content? Are we happy? Those are the things going on between our nature and our nurture. And by the time we're done with Act 1, our personality is already formed. We basically have our personality after Act 1, at which time we have very little control. Then comes Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. What are your family relations? Your home, your friends, your neighborhood, your religion, your culture, your education, your work situation, your economic situation, the changing demands, the opportunities of society. When you grow up, what's going on in the world around you? It is our nature that interprets our nurture and determines the continuing script. So each of us is in a performance. We're each the star. And our nature and our nurture are improv directors controlling just how we develop. And so when you put yourself in the magnifying glass, and we put the magnifying glass aside, we've come to a very surprising conclusion, which is what I was promising you. So are you ready for this conclusion?
So ready, so ready.
Okay. I've come to the conclusion that there is no blame. I can't blame that difficult person. I can't even blame myself because we're all the product of this interwoven nature-nurture dance. So I take blame out of the situation. And that's very, very difficult because our nature is reacting to the circumstances of our nurture. And that determines the choices that we make and the actions that we take. So let's think about this. It's a kind of a new way of looking at things under the magnifying glass.
Yeah, I mean, this is also interesting. And just to wrap it back to how this can help you in life, this whole picture of looking through the magnifying glass and having this kind of bigger perspective on people's lives, where they come from, this interplay between nature and nurture, that not only is a way of looking at others and at yourself, but it's also a way of gaining empathy for others. Is that what I hear you saying?
Let me show you, for an example, it was with my teacher friend, who was very, very difficult to work with. So on the surface, I didn't like her. It was very difficult. I tried to avoid her at all possible. But as I got to know her more, I found out how insecure she was. She had a very bad chronic illness when she was young. She had very bad experiences with the opposite sex, very insecure of her appearance. And the way she could interact with people was kind of like putting them down before they had a chance to put her down. So once I realized that, when I put her under my magnifying glass, I was able to interact with her in a more accepting way. And as she felt my acceptance, because she was very well defended, she kind of was able to put down her defenses. And I saw underneath, she was really kind of a sweet person. But it was hard to find that out. And so that's how it works for me. But my mother was a very, very difficult person, and most people didn't want anything to do with her. And I felt so sorry because underneath she was very, very sweet, but she had mental issues, and people don't quite understand. They just don't understand, and they tend to avoid. And so there's all kind of degrees of difficulty, but difficult people sometimes feel lonely and they need a little empathy.
Yeah, that was perfect. And I think that ties us back to what you were saying about blame. Because once you can remove the blame from the other person or from yourself, then you can really get to this deeper kind of empathy and understand that maybe they're lonely or they're defensive or there's something else going on. But now it seems though you have created two mysteries that I'm very curious about. This thing about blame and dissolving blame, something that everyone watching this video I will feel at some point in their life is that blame feels justified sometimes. Sometimes it feels like there's a person in your life and you know that it's their fault. You feel really, really right about that and really angry. And in addition to that, another worry that you could have with removing all blame is what happens when someone does something wrong? Do we have no responsibility for our actions anymore? Or how do we hold people accountable?
Those are very good questions. And let me try the one where you said often blame is justified. Okay, so I want to tell you about my two friends. My first friend is Mary. Now, Mary has had a very challenging life. Most of us do, but I call her a hog because she has more troubles. She takes all the troubles. She doesn't leave any for anyone else. But it's okay. We manage to have our own troubles. But she has serious problems with each of her three children. Her husband had a debilitating stroke when he was young, and now she has terrible health issues. Yet she's always positive. Once she even apologized because she was a little down that day and she was mad at herself for being down. In general, she never ceases to amaze me because with all on her plate, she experiences joy. She wants to live. She wants to enjoy. Then I have another friend. I'll call her Jane. Now, Jane, on the other hand, she has a pretty nice life. She has a nice home, a nice husband. At a very old age, she goes dancing 3 times a week. Her children are well off, but she is always depressed, down in the dumps. Spends a lot of time worrying about things that go wrong in the house, things that could go wrong in the house, things that could go wrong with her loved ones. And she's aware of her negativity, but she can't seem to break out of it. And I think she's a difficult person, and I'm with her. I have a very hard time because I get very furious. You've got such a wonderful life and you're not enjoying it. You're complaining all the time. That's not easy to be around her. I think she has problems having intimacy with her own family because she's depressing and people don't often like to be around her that much. I feel bad because she's really lovely. And we do have good times together when I can get her out of her little cycle of depression. So sometimes I get very upset and I feel really, I can't stand it anymore. She's very difficult to be around. But then I start getting out the magnifying glass and I look at where she comes from. Evidently, she never felt loved by her mother. When she was young, she had trouble seeing, and she was sitting in class. She couldn't see the board, so she didn't do well in school. They finally realized she needed glasses. So she just came up with a very, very poor self-image. And when I think about how she feels about her mother never loving her, never doing well in school, and never having a good self-image, then I start to understand where she's coming from. And I don't know if she'll ever get out of her depressive ways, but thank goodness she does have good times and we can have fun together. We just do fun stuff and get her out of her cycle. So I just want to ask you one thing that I found. Do you know different people? And different people just seem to be positive. And some people just seem to be negative. And sometimes I wonder, maybe a little bit we're born that way. Some of us, that doesn't mean we're fixed into a positive or negative life course, but sometimes I think part of our genetic code. I mean, even if you go in a nursery and the babies are just lying there, some babies are content, peaceful, just lying there, and some are uncomfortable and they're crying and they're so sometimes I have a feeling that some of us are just born more positive than others. That doesn't mean it can't be changed, but do you ever think like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think that's the big question, right? Like the nature versus nurture question, how you started this whole conversation. Where does it start? Because they're interchangeable. If our nurture starts all the way in the womb, then how do we even separate the nurture or the nature? Yeah, it's a good question. I definitely wonder that as well, people in my life.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Each person is it's a mystery. If you put
Yeah.
the magnifying glass over, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
No matter if a person's difficult or not, we're all very interested.
That's very true. And just before we move on to that second question, can you just wrap up like these stories? How does that relate to blame?
The fact
Yeah.
is that when I'm with Jane, sometimes I get angry. So it's hard for me to be with this difficult person because it's depressing and it on and on. And you say, well, why don't you do this? I can't do that and that. And then say, well, try that. No, 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 no. And then I get tired and I get angry.
Yeah.
I'm just like me. I have trouble with difficult people. I'm saying I'm no different than anybody else, but
Yeah.
I have to get my spectators up. And sometimes you can't do that if she's really getting me upset. My spectator self is, bye. You have to wait a while. And then I say, oh, I see why she was doing that. And I'm okay for the next round.
Right. And you have to not blame yourself, right? That was part of the no blame.
Yeah, thank you.
So makes sense.
You got it. You're getting it.
I'm getting it.
You're getting it.
Yeah, but that next question, that's the real tricky one, in my opinion, about blame. Because if there's no blame, some people might say it's hard to have responsibility for your actions. So what would you say about that?
Well, first of all, I think blame and guilt is in our DNA. It's part of being a human being. I also feel when you think about it, when you're blaming something or you blame yourself, there's some kind of a moral force because inside we know what's right and what's wrong. But sometimes when we do something that we know is wrong, it makes us feel guilty or it makes us be angry at ourselves or angry at another person, or it doesn't help the situation. So to feel blame means to feel anger, to feel guilt. And those aren't too helpful, although they're very natural. I mean, I enjoy being angry. I enjoy saying that person, he did wrong and I know better. The problem is when I blame myself, it's really bad because it makes me not like myself. It makes me angry, I feel guilty, and I don't act very well. So I'm not saying don't feel blame. It's normal. But I have to wait at my spectator self. can force me out of that mode. And it helps me to be kinder to myself, because then I start realizing, why did I do that? Because I'm very bad. I'm very hard on myself. I'm very quick to blame myself. I'm very hard to get out of it. And some people are easier. They can do something wrong and they just go on. But when I do something wrong, I'm very hard on myself. It's very hard for me to get out of it, not to feel guilty. But as my spectator self, I can figure out why I did what I did. And it allows me to focus not on the blame or the guilt for what I did, but what can I do with the consequences of my actions? Because you have to live with the consequences of your actions. If you do something wrong, if you break a law, you go to jail. If you did something serious, you have to be responsible for the consequences of your actions. But on the other hand, it allows me to try to make up for what I have done, to apologize, to try and make the damage that I've created a less so. And then I really have to forgive myself, because it's healthy. It's very healthy for us to feel good about who we are. And if you know you do the best you can, you have to try and convince yourself the best you can is good enough. Okay, I think you had another question that you were gonna
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah, but first I just want to quickly summarize, because that was really important, that last bit, because basically what you're saying is actually responsibility comes from a place of forgiveness and that spectator self, understanding what you did, but not feeling that shame or bad about who you are as a person. It's like saying, okay, I did something wrong. I have to deal with the consequences, and I have to, maybe you have to apologize or repay or something. But being blamed for something or feeling guilty for something is actually working against being held accountable or feeling accountability or responsibility for your actions.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, honey.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, you have to understand there were reasons, because your nature and your nurture are interacting in certain ways. So
Right.
you have to forgive yourself, understand yourself, and like yourself, because you're doing the best you can.
Yeah. And so actually that brings us back to what we were talking about in the very beginning about all of these reasons, the magnifying glass, being Sherlock Holmes. You're looking back over people's lives, over your own lives, in order to understand and rather than blame other people. So can we get back to that idea about seeing each other as fellow journeyers? Each of us the own star of our performance. I love that. I love that. With all the dramas between the nature and the nurture. Can you go a little bit more into depth about that?
Yeah. Well, this is a part, it's kind of fun to visualize sometimes. I think we are all actors on a stage. And what we do on that stage is the script that's being written by our interplay between our nature and our nurture. So this is the drama. Okay. So as a spectator, you're in the audience and you're watching what's going on that stage. So I'm watching Karen on the stage, okay, and I'm interacting with her on the stage, and I can see myself getting very angry, and I can see her very difficult. And at the time, I'm up on that stage, and our interactions are maybe not so good that day. Okay. But as a spectator, I'm in the audience and I watch what's going on the stage. So if I get a chance, I mean, I can't get up in the middle of the performance, but when that particular performance is over, I can see what happened. So my spectator self can talk to me, Evelyn Aronson, and say, look what happened. Look how she triggered you. And look how you fell into that. And okay. So then Evelyn Aronson gets back up on the stage. And the next time she sees Karen, she acts a little differently. What I'm saying is the spectators watching while the act's going on, you can't get in there. It's going on. You can say the wrong thing. You can do the wrong thing. You know, you can act like a human being and do stupid stuff. But then later on, you go back, the spectator says, look what you did in that scene. That was really wrong. That was funny. That was silly. Maybe next time you can do better. Or maybe now you realize, gee, you did something pretty good on that stage. Maybe do that again.
So just to bring it all together, could you just leave us with some final words about your secret to dealing with difficult people as the Jewish saint that you are?
Well, I'm really not so good, but my spectators forces me to look in the mirror and I see I'm a fellow journeyer. I'm the star of my own drama. I'm directed by my nature and my nurture, and I do the best I can, and I deserve awe and I deserve empathy. And that's what I feel. We all deserve awe. Life is tough. Do the best we can. And we all deserve a little empathy. And also, we should like ourselves because we're worth it.
I love it. And can you just remind us one last time, why is it so important to have and to appreciate these two lives?
So to me, the engaged spectator guiding us back and forth between our two lives, between the big picture of this whole wonderful world we live in, and the little picture, which is our own life, it has the potential to enhance our life performance. We're the star of our own performance, and we may as milk it for all we can. So if you have two lives to live, it helps you to appreciate life, to have gratitude, and to have awe. It also provides you with a deeper understanding of human nature. And also, it gives you the chance for better, more rewarding, more interesting, deeper interpersonal relationships. And it helps us to deal with difficult people. I just want to say it's like an insurance policy because no matter what happens in our personal life, we have two lives to live. And our second life, looking around, being a spectator, it's always interesting and it's pain-free. So I'll tell you a little story. One time I was giving a workshop about this kind of material. And at the end, I was telling the people in the workshop, to tell you the truth, giving this workshop, because I'd never done it before, I was really very nervous. And one of my students, she said, but remember, Evelyn, only one of you was nervous.
That's so great. Wow, she really got it, right?
You really got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maya.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, I'm so grateful. And I've been thinking about it. Actually, I will tell one little story just to end it off from today. I have a very difficult coworker. Earlier today, I was hanging out with all my colleagues. We were having the best time, but I kept thinking this would just be so much nicer if he wasn't here, because he's just I find him so difficult to deal with. But actually, on my way home, he ended up saying something that really bothered me right at the end. And we all left. And on my way home, I just felt so upset and angry and like, how could he say something like that? That's so frustrating. And it made me so mad. And I actually did, because I remember we were doing this today. I was like, this is so interesting. This is a really human experience that I'm having working in a place where I have a colleague that I don't get along with. And I really tried to engage that spectator self, acknowledge that he's just insecure probably, or he has to put other people down to feel good about himself. And so I have to say, it really helped me. It calmed me down. I took a few breaths. So yeah, I thank you too, because I needed it. I needed it today.
And you realize It's not anything you're doing. He's reacting to his own life.
Yes, exactly. 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 Oh, so thank you so much.
Thank you, honey. Bye for now.
Bye for now.